Hello and welcome to Building the Premier Accounting Firm. I'm your host, Roger Connect, and this is a pleasure. I'm excited to have on here a guest that you're going to really enjoy. Each and every week we have on the experts, and today's going to be no different as we work to build your accounting business. We've got Marco Salinas. Marco is an Amazon best-selling author and has co-authored a book with legendary sales and personal development consultant Brian Tracy. He's a longtime student of marketing legend Dan Kennedy and is a media and publishing consultant himself, having published or previously hosted a radio show and at the same time having a podcast. He's now a podcast producer hosting Business Innovators Radio, and he's helping small, medium-sized businesses grow through various strategic marketing media assets. So, Marco, welcome to the show today.
Thank you so much, Roger. It's a pleasure to be here. Look forward to chatting with you.
Yeah, this is wonderful. So obviously, we work with accounting professionals, helping owners of accounting, bookkeeping, tax businesses build their businesses, and marketing clearly is a part of that. So I'm excited to have this conversation. With regards to marketing, one of the things that I want to bring up is, first of all, a definition. What in the world is marketing in general?
Yeah, so I think marketing in general has a lot to do with the message that you put out to your market about the services that you provide in a way that is attempting to build some form of trust, right? So we tend to like to do business with people that we know, like, and trust. And my belief is that marketing is the thing that you do to convey that message. And obviously that can be done in a very wide range or a very wide variety of ways. But if you're doing it right, essentially what the marketing is going to do is it's going to make your, for lack of a better term, your sales process or your client onboarding process a little bit easier, a little bit smoother, or in some cases a lot easier, a lot smoother. And so the type of marketing that I have experience with and that I've seen done and executed beautifully, typically will have someone coming to you and maybe without the marketing, they might be at a 1 or a 2 on a scale of 10. But if your marketing is done right, you can get them on a 6, 7, or 8, on the scale of basically being ready to buy. So it's obviously it's important. I don't think there's anybody out there that would be listening to this podcast that would disagree that marketing is one of those things that's just vital. I mean, it's extremely important. But obviously there's a lot of different directions that you can go with it. And that's what I like to talk about. I nerd out on this stuff. It's what I do all day long. And so I happen to absorb every bit of it that I possibly can. And that's what I've been doing for quite a bit of time. And that's why I love talking about this.
I love it. I love it. Well, we're going to nerd out on it here today. So this is going to be good. So first of all, I'm going to add to what you were sharing about marketing, just because in the conversations I'm having, I felt that this is really helpful. First of all, when I'm speaking with individuals about their accounting businesses, any business for that matter, marketing and sales is oftentimes, too often, I feel, a synonym. They just interchange those two words. And I like to define marketing and sales to just try and clear up the conversation. And so for marketing, I've always mentioned it as all those things that we're doing to get a potential customer or client to self-identify, raise their hand, and see themselves as possibly benefiting from the product or service that we offer. So in the marketing, it's the different things that we're doing to try and get our name out there, our product out there. And it can range in a variety of efforts. You've got your print, your media, your radio, you've got your networking, you've got your referrals. It's any way that business owner, in our case, happens to kind of realize that they are a potential customer and could benefit from the services being provided. So once they raise their hand and self-identify, and we're able to especially capture their contact information, once we know who they are, we're then able to put them into our sales cycle and nurture them to the point of getting a sale. So all of these things that we're talking about at the marketing level are obviously those things that we're intentionally doing to get our name out there. And there's a variety of ways. And I know that you're really quite particular at your expertise of content marketing. A lot of people talk about blogging, writing content, social media. What's content marketing?
Yeah, so I think the content marketing that we are very focused on, that I think a lot of businesses can do well with, is using information as a starting point to begin the conversation, right? So a lot of times, people kind of have a little bit of a guard up when it comes to um, purchasing something, or specifically when you're hiring someone for a particular service, we know that we need it, but we're always a little bit protective of ourselves in the sense that we want to make sure that we're not jumping into bed with someone who's going to turn around and do us wrong, right? So we're cautious, and we have to have some sort of a guard up and some sort of a filter. And this type of content marketing is exactly what will put those kind of fears to rest. This is the kind of thing that will show someone that you are knowledgeable. It will show someone that you are the absolute advocate for their success, that you're in their corner, that you're not necessarily just there to say, look, the only thing I care about is just basically just having you open up your wallet and let me just go ahead and take your money, and I really don't care about the outcome. It's really a way to prove to the prospect that you are very much, in fact, the right fit for their needs by educating them first. And so this type of content that we put out is information first or education first marketing. So it allows that prospect to basically say, okay, this guy, this gal, they really know what they're talking about. They're obviously very knowledgeable in this stuff. The information that they're sharing with me it doesn't feel salesy. It just feels knowledgeable. Again, if I need to do research, I'm gonna, when I was a kid, anyways, we had to go to this place called the library to do a lot of that kind of stuff. Now you just now you just type it in, obviously, and now we've got all this crazy chat GPT stuff, which is the next level. But the point is, though, is that the information is out there. Typically, we have to go find it, and when we're researching this stuff, this content, we're not looking for stuff that's going to be overly salesy. We're looking for stuff that's going to really educate us, and that's what this type of content marketing is. It's all about being able to be that person to give them that information that they need to put their problems at ease.
Yep, yep. Well, the content marketing, the two things that I think you mentioned and are hugely important is recognizing that it's our ability to take information that we're basically putting out there for our potential client to see, to help educate them and see us as the expert. That's the whole thing. If they, through the
Yep.
education, start to realize that the services we're providing would serve value, that they can see the relevance of what it is we're offering as to how it applies to them, and we're starting to educate them on things that are related to the services we're providing, they all of a sudden start to identify this is something I can benefit from, I could see myself using. But the whole aspect of this, my heaven's sakes, is to realize that we are the expert as well. And once we were able to actually identify ourselves as the experts to them, all of a sudden what we've done is help basically create what's called a unique selling proposition. They realize that we're the solution to their need.
That's right. That's
Yep.
exactly right, Roger. Yep. Now, let me just, if you don't mind, can I just flip the script on you here for a moment and
Please,
ask
please.
you, have you been able to implement any of those kind of strategies within your own business and within your own firm?
We have. I'd like to think that we've got room to improve because there's always opportunities to do it better. But what we've recognized, and I really think this is something that's maybe in the last few years at most, is marketing today has really become a thing of a giver's gain kind of philosophy. It's what can I put out into the marketplace where I'm helping my potential customers? What can I do to edify them, educate them? And so we've really taken on an approach of what can we do to disseminate information so that they have resources. So we provide a lot of free content. And
Yeah.
in exchange for some of that, we do expect that they'll provide us their name, their email. And through that funnel experience, we've got basically now a contact that we know who they are, and we're able to now drip to them over time, basically through either email marketing or something of the like, maybe social media information that helps position us as being the expert. And so there's a process to this. It's deliberate, it's intentional. And so we're constantly trying to identify what free content can we produce that has value that somebody will want to see, and in some instances will be willing to exchange their name, their phone number, their email in an effort to receive some of this information because it's that valuable. And
Yeah.
in that equitable exchange, we're hopefully getting the contacts that we need to nurture along the way to maybe doing business with us someday.
Yeah, listen, Roger, you're ahead of the pack, my friend, and a lot of times I'll talk to business owners, and we're going over the most basic stuff, and they're just looking at me like I've invented fire or something. It's like you don't know this stuff. I thought we all knew this stuff, but the reality is the majority of businesses, and in any niche, it really doesn't matter what niche, they are all usually not giving enough time or attention to these to these matters. So it's really cool to hear that you're actually you're definitely already on the ball with this stuff. No question about it.
Well, I appreciate it. Well, I think there's two things to recognize here as business owners. First and foremost, we have to be experts at marketing. It all begins there. It's the top of the funnel. If we're expecting to grow our businesses, we've got to be really good at how we're finding our ideal clients. But the second thing I would add to this is we always need to be willing to test and try new things. So I have a philosophy that I use with my clients where I teach what's called the rule of thumb. It's to say that you should have 4 proven marketing strategies that are effective. And oftentimes people will say, well, I've joined this networking group. I do, let's say, Google ads. I do this social media campaign. And so they've got these 4 things that they've identified as effective ways of finding and identifying their clients. But there's this 5th one, the thumb, which is what we need to be testing all the time to say, okay, if one of those 4 things was to go away for whatever reason, which in 40 years of our being in business, there are numerous things that used to work that today are totally ineffective. We used to advertise in the newspaper, for heaven's sakes.
Right.
Nobody's doing that any longer. And
Right.
so that 5th thing is a way to replace some of these things that kind of age out or change or go away. But the other thing about the 5th thing is with the rule of thumb, you're also able to test or try things that honestly could eventually become much more effective than one of the 4 proven things you're already using. And so you've got to be willing to test that. And funnels, that was something that was very exciting a few years ago that we ended up testing. And a lot of people aren't familiar with what funnels are, but they're a very effective way online to basically connect with and capture contact information to then label or be able to nurture them. So,
That's right. That's
yeah,
absolutely right. And it's a great point that you bring up because with marketing, a lot of these principles I mean, let's put it this way: this stuff is not new, right? These things have been around, and when you go back and you study some of the greats, like the Ogilvies and these types that have been advertising in the early, 20th century, this stuff has been around. It was just done a little bit differently because the media was different. Back then, we maybe, like you said, maybe there was more of a newspaper thing, and of course, we had the yellow pages,
yeah,
and
yeah,
there was more of an emphasis on the telephone because we didn't have internet yet. Now, obviously, this has all changed. We've got a different landscape here, but we're still using a lot of the same principles. It's a lot of the same concepts. It's
yeah.
just basically saying, all right, now we just got to apply it to this different media.
Well, let's do this. Obviously, you're very familiar with a variety of things, especially with the various trainings you have. So, when we talk about networking, give us some platforms that we can use for networking.
So let me start off with this. I think the my favorite one is the one that we're actually using right now, and that's the one that I like to highlight, which is doing networking through the podcasting platform. And this is just kind of one of those things, right? Podcasts are a really big deal. I think during COVID, we saw probably some of the biggest numbers in terms of listenership, right, on podcasts because, well, for obvious reasons, people were at home and they really couldn't go anywhere, and they started diving into all this content and it really kind of blew up. Now there are just so many different podcasts that are out there. But I think the interesting thing is that I think there's over 2 million podcasts on the Apple podcast platform, but there's only about 500,000 that are actually active. So, I think starting the podcast is always the exciting and the fun thing, but keeping it going is always the more challenging aspect of that. But I think what people are sleeping on is the fact that podcasting is not always just like what we see some of the bigger people doing, like for example the Joe Rogans and all that, right? We kind of want to emulate that. We have a show and we just kind of talk about things, and there's not necessarily a very specific subject or a very specific topic. But I think what a lot of people are missing out on is the fact that really this is a killer networking opportunity. So if you're using the podcast platform and you're talking with new people, just like you and I are doing, we're getting to know each other. We're asking each other questions. I'm learning a little bit about you and your background. You're learning about me and mine. And now we've got a good connection, and then we'll spend 30 minutes to an hour talking about this stuff and getting to know each other. And so I think that is a huge opportunity. I think about traditional networking when you go to an event, you go to a function, you've got your business cards ready to go. There's a bunch of people there, and it's kind of the luck of the draw in a lot of ways, right? You walk in, maybe there's someone standing there, you'll kind of approach them and you'll start to spark up a conversation. I've had, those type of situations where I'll just really luck out and I'll meet somebody that seems to be a great fit, and I'm like, okay, that was awesome. But probably more times than not, I go to a function like that, and I end up leaving there like, there were some nice people there, but they weren't really my ideal prospects. And with the podcast platform and this type of networking, you're able to really laser focus, right? I know that if I'm coming on your show and I'm talking with you and your audience, that's a good fit for me. And you know that bringing me on as a guest is of benefit to you and your audience as well. Talk about a win-win, man. I mean, that's what a great usage of our time. Our time is so limited. We've got to make sure that we're using it as well as we can because we've only got, so much time each day. Why not spend the time to have a little bit more of a laser focused networking process by using your platform, and in this case, the podcast. And I think that works a lot better.
Having attended recently a podcast conference, I can attest to what you're describing. It's a wonderful platform for us to actually find our potential customers. So let me just kind of put the spin of accounting on this then. For
Sure.
accounting professionals that have actually chosen to niche their services, where they're specializing in a specific industry as they provide accounting services, they have the opportunity to really, from a podcast point of view, create what's called a one sheet. It's a single PDF sheet of paper that you actually use to highlight what you can discuss with someone, why
That's
you're the
right.
expert, why they would want to have you on the show. And essentially, what you use is that sheet to reach out to podcast hosts and offer your time to be on their show as a guest. And in doing so, what you're going to do is offer your ability as the expert in the accounting space to address some of the needs or concerns or issues that your niche is addressing as they're running their business. So just to throw one out there, let's assume that you've chosen the cannabis industry. If you're in the
Yep.
cannabis industry, there's numerous episodes, podcasts out there that are focused on cannabis, from running the business, distilleries, the dispensaries, and so forth. So all of a sudden, you can come on that show where the host has you as a guest, highlighting some of the accounting ramifications, the tax ramifications, how to do the bookkeeping for that business. And the people that are in that space would really appreciate having an opportunity to have you come on the show and basically share your wisdom of why in that niche accounting is so relevant and important. And all of a sudden, you've just positioned yourself as the expert, and you're then able to really, at a broad way, like you were describing, get your message out there to the masses in that particular space. And so podcasting is a phenomenal way for someone to actually dive in and really go deep. So I'm
That's
hoping my
right.
listeners are recognizing that whatever niche they've chosen for their accounting services, they may have opportunities not just to join an association for the homeowners association or home builders association and go on a home builders general contractors podcast, but also attend maybe their associations. I mean, there's a variety of things you can do to go deep and actually be that expert, offering some quality value as you dispel some of the information you have in a free format. So great. No, I'm loving
100%.
this discussion. This is really good. So what's your background in marketing as it relates to the business world? Do you have a particular thing you emphasize or specialize in?
Yeah, I do. I'm a big proponent of what you just mentioned earlier, which was positioning. And so positioning yourself as the expert within your niche usually requires some type of effort into what we call authority marketing, right? And so that's the type of marketing that is really specifically puts that energy and that effort into making sure that your ideal prospect sees you in a little bit of a higher setting or a higher level, so that they know, again, like we were mentioning earlier, this guy definitely knows what he's talking about. This gal is a whiz kid when it comes to this subject matter, and I had better give her or him all of my attention when I'm sitting down with them. So number one, you're perceived as a far higher value, right? Nobody wants to be some sort of a commodity to their client. We don't want to just be like, hey, I've got an appointment with this person, but you know what? He's nobody special. And so if I have to cancel, no big deal. And I think early on, a lot of us have gone through that experience at the beginning of the process when we're running our businesses. We haven't built that authority yet. We don't have all that experience quite yet. And so a lot of times we do have to go through those things. But if you put effort into building out this type of marketing, those type of problems do start to subside. And as a matter of fact, what sold me was when I had done the book with Brian Tracy about 12 years ago. I noticed immediately that the customers went from me chasing them to them starting to chase me in that one big authority move of becoming a published author like that. And then as I started getting different, media appearances, and I went on my local television station a few times, and I was able to take that video and repurpose it and use it in all kinds of different formats, just from that one little, let's call it a 3-minute segment that I did on the news. I started realizing, like, man, when I put this stuff out there, it really changes the whole dynamic of the relationship with these prospects of mine. And again, now they're really trying to seek me out. If there's an appointment, they absolutely don't miss it. And when they do come in, boy, do I have their undivided attention. And so doing this type of marketing, it works. Let me tell you, it works very, very well. And it allows you to cherry pick a little bit more as well, your prospects, because now you can say, okay, the bottom feeder types, the annoying types, the ones that are a little bit too, just too difficult. I can afford now to go ahead and let those folks go, because I'm starting to get these better prospects that really value and appreciate me. And I think we can all agree, Roger, that's the type of client that we want to work with, right? Those are the people that make doing what we do so enjoyable. So it's very much worth the time and the energy and the effort to do this type of marketing.
Perfect. I'm glad you've brought this up, because so often I think people, when they're talking about how do you distinguish yourself as that expert, how do you position yourself as the authority, as you've mentioned, books obviously come up. The ability to author and be a published author here is something that can really be a differentiator. So bringing up this whole book thing is important. The benefits of it you just described, the clear fact that you're perceived as someone that they want to meet with, they're going to meet with, and they respect your time. All those things are valuable, but let's back up a little bit. And as accounting professionals, what would you say if somebody listening to the show has this itch to publish a book? I mean, where do they start? What do they do? I'm just kind of curious what insights you might have as to where you begin. What is that process like?
Sure. Yeah, absolutely. I think with anything, like with anything else, you're going to have to make sure that you're putting a little bit of research time into that whole project. Now, obviously, this is something that I can help business owners with, but there are some people that I talk to where they're like, listen, I have the time, I have the means and the ability to go ahead and put this whole entire book project together myself. And I'm the first guy to say more power to you. If you're able to do that, absolutely 100% do that. Grab that keyboard and start typing away. But before you start typing away, you want to spend a little bit of time in making sure that you are first and foremost answering the questions that your ideal prospect would typically have. In my opinion, the best type of a book to use and to generate from a business perspective would be a question and answer type book. Because again, it's not so much, well, I want to do a book about this. It's more so of, what would my client or what would my prospect appreciate and what would they benefit from? And a lot of times it's, I have questions and I'm coming to you for those answers. So why not start with a simple question and answer book that addresses the most common questions? I mean, usually I'm sure accountants or people in any niche will agree that they tend to hear a lot of the same questions over and over again from prospects for the most part. Once you've done this for a few years, you start to realize, all right, there's a list of, let's say, 10 things or 15 items maybe that I just kind of hear over and over and over again. And that's where I would start. I would definitely identify what those main questions are, the ones that you tend to hear often, and then make some sort of an outline that would allow you to kind of have a basic answer to those questions. And then from there, that's when you're going to really want to get busy and say, all right, so the very first question is, how does this work? And what should I be looking out for? All right. So then I'm going to sit there and I'm going to write a response that answers that exact question. And obviously you want to put out enough content so that you can provide a good answer. But I also caution business owners in this regard not to go too overboard either, because we live in what I call the digital attention span economy, right? I mean, we're all just inundated with all these digital things, and now we're in the era of reels and TikToks, and we've got these little dopamine hits that are hitting us nonstop. And so I think a lot of people, when they're looking for a solution to their problem, they want something that is easy to digest. They're probably not looking for something that makes them feel like they're back at college again, and they've got to do a big painful book report on the thing or something, right? They want their questions answered quickly and easily. So provide that information, give it to them, in my opinion, shoot them straight, right? Kind of short and sweet kind of responses. but again, enough so that you can still put together a decent amount of content, so that if you put it together as a book, you're giving them something that is reasonable in size, not too small, but definitely not too big. And that way, when you give that book away, again, you should probably do something like this as a lead generator. So my ideal situation is give book away, receive contact information in exchange, which is kind of what you were talking about earlier, Roger. And doing so allows you to build your list. So now you're generating that lead, you're building that list. Now you can follow up with them, as you mentioned. You can drip on them, you can send them an email. Heaven forbid you collected their address and you send them something in the mail with a little stamp on it. Oh my gosh. Believe it or not, those things also work exceptionally well still today. And as the mailbox has become kind of less cluttered and the inbox has become very cluttered, I think that actually may be a better route to stay in front of people as well. But the point is, you want to give them that valuable content. You want to answer their questions. And I think that's probably a way for a business owner to be able to put something like this together that's going to get them the biggest return on their time of putting this whole thing together.
Yeah, I'm appreciating your explanations here, because what you just described there is what's referred to as a lead magnet. The lead magnet says, I've got something here tangible. If you want it, you have to give me something in exchange, which is your contact information. Voila, you get something in the mail. And the beauty of the hard copy is it is so much different than a PDF or something in the email that you're able to easily delete. It's going to sit there. It's going to constantly remind them of you. And all of a
Right.
sudden, this book is just this ever-present thing, which is referred to as top-of-mind awareness, TOMA. Top of mind awareness is a way of simply saying in the marketing that you're ever present or ever present in their mindset, simply because of your having that book in their sight. So lots of things I'm liking about this. Now I want to go to, with regards to the book, you talked about doing this Q&A kind of version of a book. You've got your fictional, your novel, your storytelling, you're doing a Q&A. And I think that's really helpful for my listeners, just because they can kind of see, okay, what kind of book may I write? And that Q&A version is a very easy one to write, because you regularly go through your day being asked questions professionally. What are you answering? And you can elaborate these answers now with the book. The thing I'd like to
Exactly.
add to that is a word of caution that I've received that has proved invaluable in all of my marketing, and it's to teach or address the what and the why, but not the how. The how is what they pay for. And so you can talk
Right.
about what they need to be doing and why it's so important. And in answering all of those things, you're educating that potential customer as to what they need to know because of why it's important and what it is. But at the end of the day, you're going to leave the how to, you need to work with me and I can help you streamline this, accelerate this, do it correctly. And that how is what they're paying you for. So you always want to leave the hows typically out of the explanation, just so that they can pay you for what it is your expertise is.
That's right.
Now, this brings me to another question that I want to ask you, simply because you've co-authored with Brian Tracy. I think some of my listeners would want to know, do I have to write the book by myself, submit it to a publisher, hope that somebody likes it enough that they're going to publish it? Should I self-publish? But I want to bring up this idea of ghostwriting. If you could explain what ghostwriting is, and co-authoring, as you just mentioned that you did with Brian Tracy. I could write it all by myself. I can co-author it. I could ghostwrite it. Just real quickly explain what those three things are.
Sure. Yeah, absolutely. So with respect to, we'll start with the co-author. So again, I co-authored a book with Brian Tracy. Now at that time I had a different business. I was helping other businesses to establish corporate credit and business credit under their, LLC or, their corporation name. And so in that case, what I did was I was able to align myself with someone who is obviously a recognizable figure in the business world. So the moment that I'm, side by side with the individual on the book, I'm automatically getting some of that authority, rubbing right off of me. So this was a
Yeah.
way for me to catapult myself into, hey, this guy's, connected to somebody who's been around for a very long time. It's almost, they're now an extension of me in a sense. So that gave instant credibility and instant trust by doing so. So first and foremost, think about who you're going to partner with, because if you can make that partnership someone who is somebody within that specific niche that you're focusing on, that's kind of like taking your elevator straight to the top, right? You bypass the line by doing things like that, and you save yourself a whole lot of time, and you build instant authority and credibility. So there's that first. The second thing is that if they contribute, you also get a little bit more content, right? So my book went from being, something that was going to be kind of small because it was just going to be my few chapters about business credit. Now all of a sudden I added Brian Tracy in there, and he's talking about goal setting and leadership and sales and things that business owners can always benefit from. So even though it's not the exact topic of what I was writing about, which was the business credit side, they still go hand in hand. They still complement each other very nicely. And so he provided his content and I provided mine. And now all of a sudden I had a decent little sized book. I had more content. So having somebody else come along like that is kind of nice because you're able to put out a book with a little bit more, a little bit more juice, so to speak, behind it. And it's got a little bit more information in there. And then again, to your point earlier, when you're holding these things, when you're touching these things, there's just something about having a book sometimes that does have a little bit more meat to it. Now, again, as an intro, as a starter, I still go back to that basic concept of keep it kind of short and keep it kind of simple, right? I think that is always a very important thing. But there's a lot of different ways you can go with these books, and having a book that has more content is definitely has its place. There's no question about that. Now, as far as ghostwriting, Roger, that is a very, very nice setup because obviously you're not having to do the hardest part, and that always is the hardest part because writing a book can be extremely time consuming, and you've also got to have the discipline to sit there and write and write and write and write. And so I talk to people all the time that tell me, yeah, I've got a book project, but I'm like, 3 years in and I still haven't been able to get this thing done, but I hope to be able to get this thing done here sometime soon. And so I'm thinking to myself, I think it's awesome again, but how many missed opportunities? What was your opportunity cost by not getting that book done 2 years ago? Okay, maybe it took you a year to get it done, but now we're on year 3. You could have been giving that thing away, like gangbusters and making all kinds of new leads and new business connections and new opportunities. And you could have already elevated your status and you haven't been able to do any of those things yet. And so I think we also need to remind the business owners that, again, time is their most valuable asset. What is the opportunity cost to not getting this done? And that does open up doors to, well, I got to have to pay someone now. All right. Ghostwriting is exactly that. Somebody will write it for you. They'll get a lot of the research even. They will do it for you, but it will absolutely come at a cost. So you do need to be aware of that. Typically right now, from what I've seen, the going rate for just a small 100-page book, ghost written completely, is usually right around 15 grand, $15 to $20,000. So you're definitely gonna need to set aside a good chunk of change towards that project. But again, what I do see, the amazing thing is that I see people spending $15, $20, $30,000 on these book projects, and they still receive an enormous return on investment because that's how big it is to have a book, and that's how much of a game changer it can be for you and your business to have one. So those type of things do need to be considered. You will invest a decent sized budget into the thing. However, if you're doing things right, you should be able to see a nice return on that, especially if you are in a niche that we would consider maybe, let's call it high ticket, right? Something that's in the high ticket space. So when you close a transaction, you're making several $1,000s off of that particular transaction. And if you're in that space, boy, let me tell you, the mathematics really lines up very well. It lines up nicely because, again, your efforts that you're putting into this thing may cost you something, but you're going to be able to close just a few deals and then see your money back. And then before you know it, now you're profiting. So
Yeah.
I think, did I miss one of them, Roger? I covered 2 of them. What was the other question?
Well, it's writing your own book, just taking the initiative to write your own. There's ghost writing, there's co-authoring. So I think those
Yes.
3 we covered. The one thing I do want to really draw attention to is you just brought, I think, everything full circle to the accounting perspective, which is the ROI. One of the things that I think we need to recognize as we're considering whether or not this is something we want to add to our marketing repertoire is the fact that all of a sudden you've got this book that may have cost you, 10, 20, 30,000, as you mentioned. But at the end of the day, the book's going to be there for years. So you can amortize this over the next 3-5 years. And if you can consider that it improves your closing rate, the likelihood of you getting a customer, all of a sudden knowing what your cost per acquisition is for you to get a client and your lifetime value of a client. Let's assume that you've got a client that's $6,000 in bookkeeping services a year. You keep them for 7 years. So now you're well into $30,000, $40,000 in just bookkeeping services that client is worth to you. Well, if you just got one of those every 6 months, one of those a year, I mean, you can easily see that over the long haul, this is going to more than pay for itself if you just can have that long-term perspective of leveraging yourself as an expert being an author. So lots of
That's right.
values in all of that. Let's go ahead and just wrap this up then with one last question. You interacted with Dan Kennedy. You've got others that I'm sure you subscribe to and respect as you're trying to be in that marketing space. Who is it that really has impacted your career, that you learned the most from, and what was it that you learned from them?
Yeah, so I know you've already mentioned him, but I really do have to just give that main focus and emphasis to Dan Kennedy because he is absolutely he's my number one guy. There's absolutely no question about it. And Dan's approach is what he calls the no BS approach. And that's what I like. I like no BS when it comes. Give me any subject matter. If you apply no BS to that, I'm a happy guy because I don't like the beat around the bush stuff and I don't like the sugarcoat it. I like for people to tell me what I need to know, what I need to hear. The other nickname that Dan has is he's the professor of harsh truths or harsh realities. Because again, as business owners, sometimes it's not all fun and games out here, right? I mean, we have bad days, we have difficult clients, we have years where it just doesn't go so well for us because of third party external things that are going on in the world. Now, I think the great news about your niche, Roger, is that accountants are very much in demand. And from what my own experience here locally in my own town, and I have a good friend of mine that's actually a CPA, and so we meet up at least about once a month for lunch and we talk business, and so I've kind of had the opportunity to go in a little bit into that world, into y'all's world, and learn a few things. But I think my biggest takeaway is that the guy is in demand. He's absolutely in demand, and that is a wonderful thing. But again, things happen, and it doesn't always apply like that to everyone. And so with business, we need to be ready for things to go not the way that we want them to. A big part of that is making sure that we have systems in place and having specifically marketing systems in place because referrals are important and you should have a referral system in place. But sometimes the referrals will fluctuate. Sometimes they'll go up and sometimes they'll go down. And so it's better to make sure that you have a system to generate a consistent flow of leads that are coming in that are reliable, that will be there. And that way, when you kind of have these little rough patches from time to time, that there's still going to be some new faces that are coming in and some new opportunities to talk to new people and build and grow your business. So I think for me, Dan he's my number one guy. And I've learned about a ton of other people because of him. He always says, check out this book and check out this author. And I'll usually will make a very, very important note of writing down the people who he talks about. And I'll just give one quick mention, if you don't mind, to someone he recommends. The book is called Winning Through Intimidation by Robert Ringer. And that's absolutely one of my top 5 books of all times. And even though the book is saying winning through intimidation, it's not a book about going and learning how to intimidate others. It's really a book about how to make sure that you're not letting others intimidate you within business and even in life. And so that was one of Dan Kennedy's recommendations and probably one of his all-time favorite authors as well. And I can't recommend that book enough. And so any of that information I think is extremely valuable. And the point is, we got to keep reading. We got to keep learning all the time, Roger. I think it's vital.
I love it. I love it. No, these are wonderful insights, and I really appreciate them. So here's what I'm going to do. I'm going to wrap this up. I do want to have you leave a final thought here in a moment. So let me do a summary, and then I'm going to come back to you for your last words there. First, I do want to point out that if you'd like more information regarding Marco and what he does, he actually has some information that I'll put in the episode description that you can check out. There's actually a done-for-you publishing service that he offers that relates to the book discussion that we had earlier. And then at the same time, I'll put the information regarding the book that he just mentioned so that you can actually see that and perhaps get more information about it as well. The other thing I wanted to point out is regarding co-authoring. If you're interested, there is a co-authoring program that Universal Accounting Center offers where you're able to actually in your marketplace own and utilize two specific books, Your Strategic Accountant and also Your Profit and Growth Expert, to help distinguish you as offering the premier accounting services in your area that you'll also want to just check out and see what those consist of and how you might be able to leverage those in your marketing. Lastly, the summary. This was a great conversation. I love the fact that we were able to get into things such as what marketing is. We talked about funnels. We talked about definitely podcasting of all things, how you can use your expertise to get on shows within your niche and do so in a way to leverage your time and ability to get in front of your potential clients. I thought that was a phenomenal discussion. We also talked about books themselves, how they are a great way to position yourself as a published author, expert, and in doing so, really use that over a period of time to generate the leads you're looking for, increasing your closing rates. It's a viable way of affordably getting clients that are high-ticket clients that really see the value that you bring to the services that you're offering. And with regards to all this, we kind of got into the nuances of it all. We talked about self-publishing, we talked about ghostwriting, co-authoring, and the leverages or advantages of each of those. I thought that was very helpful. But to just kind of go full circle back to the marketing, I just think we really do need to consider, how is it that we're getting our messaging out there? Where is it that we're finding our ideal customers? What is it that we're communicating to them? And how do we give extra value to the things that we're saying, making it so that it's more educational and, most importantly, not just educational, but helping everyone realize that you are, in fact, the expert in the marketplace as to the services that you provide. So wonderful little insights that we were able to derive from our conversation today. And I really appreciated Marco being here on the show. So Marco, what's your final thought?
Yeah, I think my final thought, Roger, is first and foremost, this was a blast. So thank you so very much for having me on. Always enjoy talking marketing, especially with somebody who's actually doing marketing and is actually living it and kind of knows this stuff. So thank you very much for that. Again, I think that I would just like to leave on a parting note, reminding your listeners that you cannot spend enough time building out marketing for yourself and specifically for your own name. Make sure you're not neglecting putting that effort into making sure that when somebody does a search for your name or your name plus business name, that good things show up on Google. This is so vitally important. Most people will take the time to at least say, let me just do a quick little something on this guy. Let's look him up, this gal. Okay, great. And as long as they see that you're out there, you're active. Oh, there he is on a podcast. Oh, look, it goes to Amazon. There's his book. That's the kind of stuff that will seal the deal a lot of times in the mind of your prospect. So make sure that you're doing those things, because this stuff is just, it pays enormous dividends. It's evergreen. It stays out there and it has endless returns. As long as you're doing what you're doing, that information is there and it's there to support you and make you look like a rock star. So invest that time and energy into doing all this. It'll be all worth it. No question about it.
I love it. Love it. Wonderful advice and excellent summary. So here's what I'm going to do. I'm going to encourage all of the listeners, if you haven't already, subscribe to the podcast. Each and every week we come out with a new episode where we have on a guest, an expert in their own right, to help us with a variety of things related to having the premier accounting firm, whether it be marketing, selling, pricing, client onboarding, offering quality accounting services. Perhaps it's client relations, client retentions, mental health. We run the gamut here with the various experts that we have on. So definitely subscribe to the show. And if you haven't already, go back and binge watch some of the episodes. We've got a wide variety of people that you can listen to, and I would encourage you to take advantage of those. We, in fact, have a variety of playlists that if you go to universalaccounting.com, you can find some of the highlight playlists that we've put together that you can actually take advantage of as well. Now, regarding the podcast, I do want to invite you to GrowCon. We actually have an annual event for owners of accounting, bookkeeping, tax businesses, where you can come and hear from the experts from the stage and also visit with your peers in the audience and make connections, really build some of the associations that you have both personally and professionally. And at the conference, also meet a number of my staff here from Universal Accounting. I would encourage you, if you haven't already, make your arrangements to join us at GrowCon in May. And then the next thing I'd like to point out is if you'd like more information about these services, co-authoring the book, publishing, and so forth, feel free to also reach out to us here at Universal Accounting. You can give us a phone call at 801-265-3777, or you can visit us online at universalaccountingschool.com. And always remember this, if it's about accounting, it is universal. Take care and have a great day.